Outer Orange. Burger boat, ooh la 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 la, burger boat. You're such a nice burger boat. You're so great and full of love. I love the burger boat. Yeah, I don't know what I was thinking either. But hi, welcome back guys, Outer Orange here. Welcome to a deck profile with one of the best, that's right, you heard me, one of the best decks in the formats. You guys remember my tier list? Flagberg is insanely underground. This is, I don't even know if I should be talking about this. This deck is so underground that I don't even know if people are gonna believe me when I say that Flagberg is low-key here, maybe even here. I don't think people are gonna believe me. I got a lot of questions when it came to the burger boat, but we are now officially here. This is currently being streamed to YouTube, so I'm really excited that y'all are watching this as I'm discussing it. Welcome chatters, welcome everybody that's watching this. I know a lot of people have been asking me about the Flagberg deck profile. What is it? What does it do? Why does he keep winning? Why do you have a medal because of that deck? Why Outer Orange? How is this happening? Isn't the best decks Magnolia and Prison and Bastion and all the other stuff? Well, do I have news for you guys? Those decks are good. Flagberg just happens to be on their level as well, and it actually has really great matchups, amazing ways, and if you pilot this deck correctly, you will find success. So today I'll actually be showing you guys finally the Flagberg deck profile for set 4 Overdress. I have topped with this deck in Chicago, probably would have gone even further if we didn't have some issues in top 8, which okay, it happened, it's okay, we're over it, right? And then I also got 3rd place at Crow's Nest against literally every pretty much top tier deck possible. I had my entire round, every single round was just meta after meta after meta after meta. So this deck is definitely built around the concept of dealing with meta. It is very, you have to really think about it. I'm gonna go to a pretty deep analysis here, so let's go ahead and get started. Let's talk about the burger boats, the Flagberg, the homie, the Stoicheia homie. Let's do it. So before I start, I want to say thank you to Crow for doing Crow's Nest. Much appreciated for making this event. He made the medals. They look actually really amazing. I love how these came out. They have like the whole design on them, so here's what it is, and then they have a back with the actual Crow's Nest logo and everything, and I just thought this came out really well. It just makes it feel just so much more worth it when you win one of these events. And there's other stuff too. There's like also money with this, and you know, just to kind of, it's just a really nice feeling. I can't exactly explain it, but definitely made me feel like I actually earned something. So I really liked this whole process. So thank you, Crow, for making these and making the whole event fun. Thank you to everyone I faced during Crow's Nest. I really appreciate it. This was definitely a fun event. Very sweaty, very sweaty. Top 4 was super sweaty, so I really appreciate it. But yeah, thank you guys for that. So, and then also we have the sleeves. So I'm using Hatsune Miku Ultra Pro sleeves actually for my ride deck, and I'm using Zorga for those. I did this on purpose. I'll kind of talk about it here in a bit why I did it like this. The ride deck not so much, but this is actually a very key importance to my deck structure. And also I have my deck box, so I'm actually using a double deck box. I've gotten a lot of people asking me about this deck box. I actually did not realize how many people would ask me, and I've actually gotten like 3 people already to buy this deck box in the last week and a half that I've had this thing. So it's actually kind of funny how far this thing has come. But this is a Dank Ritual deck box from my local, one of my locals. I don't go to them usually, but they're one of them. They're called Dabbers. They make these themselves, if I'm not mistaken. They're pretty sure they're custom makes. They're actually really gorgeous, and both my Grand Blue and my Flagberg are actually in this deck box. And then there's also this crazy full art and stuff. Very amazing stuff. I really liked how this came out, and here is the actual name of them right there. So there they are. So very solid stuff. So I highly recommend, if you're ever in Georgia, to go to Dabbers. They have a blue version of this with white lining, and then they have this one. Very beautiful stuff. It was literally $30 when I bought them. I think this is a steal for 30 bucks. It's insanely soft, textures amazing. So let's talk about the ride line, and then we'll go into the rest. This is gonna be a very fun profile. So first and foremost, I start with the starter. This is just the Overdress starter, nothing fancy. I'm using Tongue Guy because, you know, Tongue Guy, he's funny. Rancor Chain. So you might be wondering, why in the world, Outer Orange, are you playing Rancor Chain in your Flagberg deck? What is this? I actually have 2 reasons, and I'm gonna explain them here. I'm gonna show the grade 2, and then gonna explain why I'm doing this. So I'm going to show you guys the grade 2. Here's Husk Dragon. Let me explain to you why I'm running this ride line. We have the Rancor Chain, which is Soul Blast, draw 2 cards, discard an order, right? So obviously I run orders in this deck. So why would I do that? Well, Flagberg does require pieces. Flagberg actually requires a pretty good, you really need, like, to really pop off, you really just need 2 pieces. Like, in all actuality, that's all you need. But you gotta see them, and you also want to see other stuff along with it to kind of help with dealing with your matchup. Some of stuff like Persona, a couple other things. So in actuality, this is just better just to draw faster into your deck, and also maintain pieces, as this card right here literally brings you stuff back to hand. One of the most important cards of this deck is Soul Body Condensation, not necessarily for it being in order, but literally for the fact that it can revive the same pieces that you keep using. So you just want to keep reviving the same pieces and kind of doing a little kind of recursion thing. So you want to do that. So this really helps with drawing, this really helps with seeing the orders you need, and then it just also just overall helps with screwing with your opponents. That's right. So this is my other reason. Why in the world do I run this? Every time I flip my starter, by the way, this leaves go along with this too. I flip my starter, people think it's Zorga. Then I reveal this, and they think it's Magnolia. Then I reveal this, and they're still kind of tossing between, is this Magnolia or is this Zorga? So long story short, for 3 turns, the opponent has no idea what they're dealing with. For 3 turns, they're staring me down and trying to figure out how to play around a deck that they have no idea that they're playing around. But then finally, when I reveal that it's Flagberg, they literally go and I kid you not, oh shit. That's the funniest part, because normally when you're placing Magnolia, you usually try to play a certain way. Same thing with Zorga, you try to play a certain way, and when you don't know what to expect when you flip the Flagberg, that's it. There is a certain way to play against Flagberg, but if you don't know you're playing against Flagberg, well, it's a lot harder to face Flagberg. And that's kind of the fun part about this ride line, is that when you're here, people have no idea what you're playing. It could be anything. Part of why I've been kind of quiet about this is because, like, it throws people off not knowing what they're going to bump into. Some people usually, some people do like a sweat of relief, like, oh, and thank God it's not Magnolia, and then they just get killed off by this instead. In case you guys don't know, I literally went undefeated in the Crow's Nest with this exact deck. My first loss was in Top Cut, partially to a misplay. I'm not gonna lie, I probably could have played out. It was a best of 3. I could have played out game 2 better. If I did, I probably would have made it in to first and second place, but that's my own fault. But literally, people just don't know what to do against this. It's just insane. So this is the ride line. We've been going on for so long, I'm only on the ride line. So this is the ride line. Once you hit, I haven't talked about Flagberg himself. So Flagberg has a couple skills. He says when he attacks, you can counterblast 1, and for however many attacks, you get skills. So if you've attacked 3 times, he does count himself. So he is a 3rd battle. You draw a card, and then if it's 4th battle, you get to retire 2 rear guards, and then if it's 5th battle, you get to get 10k, and you have a guard restrict. Now, something I want to note about this card, it's actually eroded. The skill says your opponent chooses 2 cards to retire. Actually, it's your choice. So just letting you know, in case you face Flagberg to and against, it is not the opponent's choice. It is actually your choice. You can check the errata pages. It is there. Promise you, it's a thing. So that being said, you choose to retire 2, and then you get a 10k and a guard restrict. Now the 10k is kind of like whatever. It's nice if your opponent hits a defense, but the main thing is actually the guard restrict. If they choose to guard, they have to guard 3 cards from hand. And this sounds kind of whatever on paper, but if this is the 5th battle, and they've already had to deal with your rear guards 4 times now, and they had to guard them or take them or whatever, they're kind of in the danger zone against this card unless they prepared for it. Most decks will not prepare for this, riding up, like when you go here to here to here to here, you can actually kill on this very turn if they don't prepare their hand properly, because the thing about this is you can go around it with a certain way of perfect guarding, but if you don't set up your hand for it, you'll actually just die here. Unless you hit like literally defense after defense, you'll usually just die here. So this is where you got to be very careful. So that's kind of where this card comes to mind. Now, I mentioned something about how this on 5th battle, this is really strong. So I built my deck around the concept of making your rear guards as big as possible to make this as either impossible to guard or you just lose, or my rear guards are high enough to where they smack face so much that they probably keep staking because they can't guard it, and then they lose on this as well. So I built my deck around the concept of rear guard focused and not vanguard focused. Some people play around like, you know, having a board or whatever. There's different ways you can approach Flagberg. You can approach more towards like drawing faster. You can approach more towards like having a board all the time. Like, I forgot to mention this, I'm probably gonna put this before. A person showed me this deck. Their name is Sam, and he is the person that introduced me to Flagberg because I lost game after game after game playing Gravidia, and then I found out that I'm just playing the wrong deck. Gravidia just isn't that good into Stoicheia type decks. Like, Gravidia just loses to Stoicheia. Long story short, Gravidia's worst matchup is Stoicheia, and this deck, especially because it retires on top top of everything else, is probably one of the best to take, the best decks to take into Gravidia. So that's actually why. And thank you, Sam, so much for showing me, by the way, showing me the deck and everything. I never would have found this deck if it wasn't for him. And actually, he's the one that was originally doing pretty well with Flagberg, and he was actually the only person at my locals that was playing Flagberg. And then I found out, oh my god, I gotta play this too. And then I took his deck and I optimized it to my style, because his style is more around roaming Prison Dragon. My style is more around my rear guards beat face and you just lose. Boom, boom, boom. Of course, you want Persona. Persona is huge in this deck, like absolutely huge. Hitting Persona will probably instantly win you the game, especially if you go first. If you go first, you don't have the greatest turn. You can play around it if you mulligan properly, and I'll talk about mulligan here in a sec, but mulligan will be in a little bit. But anyway, long story short, this is just, you need this. You need 10k on your rear guards is insane. It makes all your magic numbers hit even faster. Makes your grade 2 hit. There's a grade 2 that doesn't gain power on its own. Inlet is fine because it's 13k, but you know, you need power up. This is best. Drawing into it as fast as possible is great. Keeping one in hand probably isn't too bad, especially if you're going first. If you're going second, you kind of really care, because actually if you're going second, you care a lot too. I would say you care in both situations. So yeah, be cautious. You do want to see at least one Persona. Also want the best card that's been printed in Stoicheia in a hot minute now. This is the Inlet. This is Inlet Post Dragon. It's one of the best cards in Stoicheia right now. In this deck, it's even more insane. It's really good in other decks. It's just obscene in this deck. There's a reason why this card's $20. It's actually busted. It sounds so basic, but it's a good card. Its first skill says if your opponent's Vanguard is grade 3 or greater in the battle, if this is the first battle of the turn and your Vanguard is Flagberg Dragon, just so Boston restand him. His second skill says if you've attacked a total of 4 times, you can put him into soul draw card, which is just absolutely dumb. Now this card is the card you want to recursion with some of your orders, but you also just want to utilize this card as much as possible. Keep in mind, it does say your opponent has to be on grade 3 or greater. I need to make that very clear, because this makes your mulligan so different. If you're going first, you literally can't use this card, so you might as well mulligan for some other stuff that may be more of reliance to you than this card. If you're going second, you 100% need to see this card. 102% you need to have a pop-off turn on your grade 3 ride, so you need to see this card as soon as possible. If you don't, you're probably going to lose. And yeah, it's just tough. You can kind of get around it, but this card literally enables you 4 attacks no matter what you do, as long as your opponent's on grade 3. So this is just the easy way to not have to rely on Counterblast. And this card just literally pushes for game like just super fast. So Body Condensation can revive it. You can just keep stacking it and just keep going and going and going. And this card is just really OP. Grade 2s are kind of interesting. I had to make some adjustments here and there over the course of me testing this deck. But first of all, you want to have the next best boy in the deck, and that is by far, of course, the Ascendance Assault. This card is really, really good. Sounds kind of like whatever on paper. I ignore this card's first skill completely. Its first skill is reliant on the ride. I had some people in like matches were like, wait, when do you ever use this skill? It's like, I just don't. I wish I could, but I just don't. But its first skill doesn't matter. It's just a ride line skill. You pretty much can reveal Flagberg to kind of pop him out, do something. I don't know. I actually don't even know what half the stuff it does. But regardless, the second part is the most important part is the second part. It says when your other rearguard attacks with Vanguard, if your Vanguard is Flagberg, how about stand this unit? So what happens is you can do something like this. You call, and you have your Vanguard in the middle. You swing with this, and then you restand it. And then you swing with this, and then you swing with this, and then you Counterblast restand this, and then you swing with this. It's literally a, well, sorry, you swing with this, and then you swing with this. It's literally a 2-card combo. It takes 2 cards to enable 5 attacks. That's it. That's all it takes. And it takes 2 cards to enable 5 attacks, and then everything else is just reliant on power. Like, that's just how much power you put everywhere or whatever. But it literally, to combo off on with 5 attacks, this is all you need. You need this card, you need this card, and you need to have a Vanguard. And otherwise, you will have 5 attacks every turn. Now, of course, there are some setbacks. This is 10k, so you need to find a way to buff it up. Rear guards are really nice to have, boosters and stuff like that. Power-ups of some kinds are nice to have. Persona is really nice, all that fun stuff. So if you are going first, instead of doing Inlet, because Inlet is restricted anyway, you can do something like this. You can go boom, and then boom, restand this, and then boom, restand this, and boom, you have 5 attacks. With literally just 2 of these, you can do the exact same thing. The difference is that this is way more Counterblast heavy, this is less Counterblast heavy. You can start with Vanguard and then put everything on him, and then you can attack with your other rear, and then attack with, you can attack with him, then attack with the other rear, and then restand this and attack with this again. I had a situation where I hit OT, I put everything on here, and I was swinging for pretty much 200 million. I swung, and I swung again. So there are some situations where you have to think when to pretty much attack with your Vanguard first or when to attack with your rear guards first. It is sometimes on a rare occasion you do need to change up your playstyle, but it all comes down to what you're facing and kind of what you're dealing with. Sylveon Horned Beast Aguio. So I used to run this at war, but I had to cut back because I needed counterchargers. But pretty much this card says retire this unit, and you give 5k to 2 units. Oh my gosh, which 5k are you going to give it to? Oh, this guy 100% and an Inlet 100%. An Inlet and this guy are going to be your main 2 things you give 5k. Any power-ups in this deck, you're just giving giving it straight to these guys there because they restand. Why would you want to give it to anything else? So pretty much anytime you power up, you just throw it on here, you throw it on here. Sometimes you have to throw it on some weird stuff like crits in case you just persona run, you don't have units. It does happen, but that's pretty much the purpose of these. This I use as also a rush turn and also a way to fool people. I'll literally call this card out and not call this card out and make them think I whiffed. So they'll beat my face in, and then next turn I just move it back. I call this out, I retire it, and then I get the 5k and I just kind of go all in. It's kind of like a little, like, I guess, like thought-provoking play I just do. It's definitely, some people don't know how much counterblast to give, so sometimes they'll target this and sometimes they won't, but sometimes people just won't know what I'm playing. Like, they won't even know. Like on grade 2 I can call this out, call grade 1 out, I'll swing with my van and swing with my rear, and people just won't target this at all because they just think that giving me counterblast is fine, and then they find out that that was the biggest mistake of their life. It does happen. First I'm going to start with Mantis. I run 3 copies. This is the card that I pretty much had to keep alternating between this and Aguio. I found out over time that this is just a better card because I could call this down if I'm going second. If I need to rush against stuff like Barrow, Magnus, or Bruce, I can call this card out just a lot easier and kind of just be face, whereas this card requires me to be on grade 2. Sometimes I need to see this sooner. It kind of sucks because sometimes I don't want to use the 5k this early, but sometimes I just have to. So I would just call this card out and be face, and then I'll just move it back, and then I'll just be face again, and it's just great. And that's pretty much it. It just says on place, give 5k to something that is specifically a rear guard. It can't be himself. Counter Charger. This is the card I used to run at 2, and then I had to bump it up to 3. This is Prized Trident. Pretty much he says at the end of 5 battles. So on Flagberg's swing, essentially, what you do is right before you do his skill, you do this skill first. So you countercharge first, and then you counterblast for Flagberg's skill. They both activate at the same time. You can honestly pick and choose, but I think it's just better to do this one first. As you get the soul, you get the countercharge, and you don't forget it. It is after 5th battle. This does go into soul, so you have to be very cautious how you utilize these. This card is insanely important. I would even say if you have room for it, bump it to 4. But I think 3 is a pretty fine number. If you want to push it to 4, you can. Prison's probably the hardest matchup, and I did build my deck around Prison. I thought 3 would be enough, and honestly I'm still kind of debating on the 3 or 4. I just think this card is also like super important, so it's just kind of a hard call. Perfect Guards, I've thought about cutting back here as well, but then I decided to stick to the 4 because Gravidia is a really tough matchup sometimes. Not necessarily, Gravidia isn't a tough matchup, it's just tough when they, I hate to say it, but when they hit triggers. If they hit triggers and you're on 1 damage and they go OT crit, which has happened to me, so at the end of the day, it's a little greedy to cut back on these, but yeah, you need Perfect Guards. If you see at least 1, you'll usually be fine. So this is the orders. Now the orders are very interesting. I had to change this ratio like 3, 4, maybe even 5 times. Like specifically the orders I'd run, once I picked the orders I wanted to run, at that point I kind of was fine. I used to run this at 8 and I pushed it back to 7, but pretty much we'll start with the best card. This is Soul Body Condensation. This card literally just says play it with a Soul Blast, choose a card equal to or less than your Vanguard from your drop call to rear, it gets 5k. This is your revival for Inlet and for Ascendance of Soul. Of course you're going to have matchups that are going to retire your stuff. It happens, and you know people will be like, oh no, but if you lose your stuff, what do? You just you use this, you get it back with your husk, you get 5k. Usually reviving the grade 2 Ascendance of Soul is the best thing you could do because it gives him 5k and now he hits over. So in case you don't have a way to buff up your rear guards, that is the best way to buff him up. And again, like, you just revive stuff, it's great. Now there is a backup plan in case you already have all your stuff. Say you don't need to revive. Here is the greatest card ever. It is called Nectar of Sensationalism. This card is insane. This card is the reason that I was able to win my last match before I hit top 8 for BCF Chicago. I was facing a Gravidia player and he was just beating my face in like crazy, and funnily enough, I didn't see these cards. I saw some of these, but I saw a lot of this, so I just kept playing this card. This card's skill says choose one of your rear guards, and then for every 5 in your drop you get 5k, and then after 15 you get a crit. Putting this on Inlet or Ascendance Assault is just a beautiful thing to see. I have gotten it to be 25k in the past before. It's rare, but usually the 15k in a crit I do manage to get. Sometimes I'll even use it early. I'll just put 10k on something if I really don't think I need it for later. If I want to finish the game faster, I'll just activate this if I don't need to revive anything. This card is actually nuts in this deck. I restated, so I've had my Inlet go like 38k, 43k, restanding with the crit twice, and usually this has finished me games a lot faster. It's just crazy how much this card does. A lot of people people will run the triple drive guy over this card. That is where they try to focus it more Vanguard centric over rearguard centric. My deck is so rearguard centric that I don't want to run the triple drive guy. I see why people do it, but the thing is, normally people will try to PG flag break anyway, and I'm not gonna lie, sometimes you are not gonna hit your 5 attack condition, and because of that, I feel like your Vanguard is just kind of doing his thing anyway. So I would rather just put everything on my rear guards at all times. Even if I'm not doing a 5 attack combo, I can always nectar my rear guards even if I'm not doing 5 attacks. I had to cut back for the counter chargers and for the power buff stuff, because that's when my biggest mistake when I first started building this was realizing that my rear guards just don't hit fast enough. And the thing is, if you can close down the game on your first grade 3 ride, you are amazing. And I've had it happen. I ride to grade 3 and I end it on that turn. The point of this whole deck is to literally tell your opponent you're not seeing your grade 4. And I've done that so many times. A lot of my wins have been through that. My opponent doesn't see their grade 4. Okay, I just won the game. I faced several Magnolia players. They don't even see their grade 4 Magnolia. So what do I have to worry about Magnolia? Why do I have to worry about all this other stuff if they don't even see their grade 4? If they don't see their grade 4, they already lose the game, right? So like, if I can just kill them before they see their grade 4, it won't matter. The same thing as Bastion, Bruce, all the grade 4 decks, all the grade 4 decks, Prison, all that stuff. They all need to see their grade 4 usually to win the game, and they need to wait 1 extra turn for that. So if I can just kill them before that turn happens, I just won the game. And that's part of the reason why Flagbreak is such a good deck overall, is because it can get around the system, the grade 4 system pretty easily. Gravidia is another deck that does go around the system too, because with the Gravidia is also live, also deck thins, also draws a lot on grade 3. So for triggers, of course, we have OT. OT in this particular deck doesn't matter anywhere near as much as it matters in Zorga and in Magnolia, for the sole purpose of the fact that your Vanguard is always attacking last. Normally people will have to take it or they guard it. They either guard it for a no pass, like meaning they put a PG down and they just have to discard a ton, or they will just say no guard. So like, in all actuality, this card just doesn't matter. There are some rare occasions where you attack with Vanguard first and this card comes in clutch, but out of all the Stochea decks, this is probably the least relevant in your deck. But it doesn't really matter because your rear guards just kind of do their thing anyway, and you can usually just win off of that regardless. Like, strangely enough, OT doesn't carry this deck, which I actually like. I like the fact that I don't have to think about this card at all the entire time I'm playing the game. The only time I have to think about it is if I'm thinking about decking out, or if I hit it defensively. It screws me defensively more than it screws me offensively, which is really funny to me. Funnily enough, OT isn't that important and you can easily win games without it. Honestly, like sometimes you'll hit it and it's like, okay, cool, but in actuality you already won the game. It's just like a win harder button, I guess. It never really comes up in situations where it's like, oh, I really needed this here. Like, it really just doesn't matter regardless. So just really good stuff. If you're rushing down, you hit it though, it's pretty nice. And then we have the heals. Obviously you want 4 heals. Heals are super important. Next I have 4 vanilla crits, and I had my octopus guy and I had the fairy guy because I kind of wanted a nice little difference. I like both arts really a lot. I like the flowers and I also like the gooey woolly, so I just decided to I wanted to go 2-2, and then I was like, I'll just go this way. Next I want to talk about a really important card. Actually, there's 2 important cards in this deck, but I'll talk about this important card first. So this is the crits. If you know me really well, you'll know that I absolutely hate this card. Not the art or anything. I hate the skill with the Burning Passion. Unless you're a deck that absolutely needs it, like something like Baron Magus or whatever, I think these cards are just bad. I just don't like them. I hate the fact that it's 2k. If it was 3k, I'd probably like them a little bit more, because at least it would make grade 2s be 13k bases. Like even Ascendant Soul would appreciate it. Ascendant Soul is a 10k. You know, if this was 3k, it would make Ascendant Soul hit. But because it's 2k, I know there are some rare situations where it makes magic numbers, but it's so rare and so inconsistent that dropping the 15k shield, in my opinion, just isn't worth it. The other thing I don't like about it is that it's a 4k base. I understand why it has an effect on it. It has to be a 4k base, but the problem is because it's a 4k base, it's really hard to justify running this. So I actually, most of the time, a lot of my decks, Zorga is a rare one where I think I have like a 2-2 split, but you know, my Gravidia deck, a lot of my decks actually do not run this card for the sole purpose of the fact that it's not doing me enough to drop 15k shield for. This is a 15k shield card that you're dropping for soul. Now, like I said, if you're playing Baron Magnus, you don't really care. You need 15 soul, you need need to kill, it doesn't matter, right? But if you're playing other decks where you're not killing on your first grade 3 ride or whatever, dropping these down just isn't worth it sometimes. But I do run it in this deck for the sole purpose, and I used to run this less. I upped it. It's for prison. Prison will imprison your soul, and imprisoning your soul is a problem because then you can't restand your inlet. Your only other out is persona riding. So in case you can't persona ride, this is your next go-to. You need to see this because you can boost this behind inlet and then put this into soul. After the battle ends, give 2k and then put it soul blast it out to restand the inlet. You need to restand the inlet. It's your main way to win, so you need to do that. So because of that, I'm running this card for that sole purpose. I'll usually imprison this. I'll force them to imprison it, like whichever way I choose to let them do it. I'll usually give it to them with on grade 4. I'll just literally give them this card, and then I'll just take it out with a counterblast, and then I'll use it to put into soul and restand my inlet. So this card is very important into that specific matchup. Outside of that matchup, I would just cut these out completely. Like I would go, I have 5k bases are still super important, even behind a Flagberg turn, behind a rear guard. It makes magic numbers. It's still super good. The 4k is just not it. I just want to get that out there. I don't think I've talked about on the channel before about how much I don't like the crit effects. I just hate them. I hate them so much. If they were just 1k more, I would appreciate them so much more. 15k shield is too important in Overdress. I hate to say it, but it just is. It's too important and you need it. Anyway, last but not least, speaking of effect triggers, raw effects, I actually don't even know if I would rather these be the 5k ones, but at the end of the day, 10k shield is pretty nice. It really comes up so rarely that this actually helps me. The 10k shield, strangely enough, has not helped me majority of the games, mainly because of Persona. The opponent personas, and guess what, this card just doesn't matter anymore. I hate to say it, but it just doesn't. Persona is just really good. Like your opponent goes, okay, cool, 23 to your 13. You still have to block with a 15. It changes nothing. So strangely enough, these cards have not always come in. They usually come in handy more earlier than late game. However, aside from the effect, let's talk about the actual draw. So draw is super important. This deck does need draw. I was actually debating on making these fronts for the hottest moment of my life, just for the straight shield that the 20ks provide. However, I decided to stick with the draws because you can potentially brick. It does happen. And when you do brick, these really come in clutch. Sometimes you draw into the best pieces in the world and it saves you the game. Sometimes you don't, but for the most part you do. They are 10k shields at the end of the day. Sometimes it comes in handy, sometimes it doesn't. It's kind of a little wishy-washy in my opinion, and that's why I'm kind of weird about them to begin with. But I do think I actually used to run more draws. Actually, this card right here, it was this card or this card, I can't remember which one. One of these used to be a draw, and actually at some point I think both of these used to be a draw, and then I changed them to crits because crits just finish games. There really isn't too much else here. I would say that there's definitely some lines of play that you want to be cautious of. Your mulligan is insanely important. So you're going first mulligan. Let me just talk about it real quick. You're going first mulligan. You'll probably want at least one of these or this one, pretty much one order of some kind. You'll want a persona ride just to keep for later. You'll want one of these. This is if you're going first. If you're going first, you'll want something like this. So since you're going first, this is probably the most ideal cards that you want to look for. You want one of these or this, whichever one, just mainly for your ride line. You want your ride line to be successful, right? And then Persona is really good. And then you want these. So these are pretty much your beat sticks to push. In case you can push, you can do that. Another mulligan you may want to go for is this. Just for early on, you can just call it out and then call rear guard or something and smack face. And then you can go into this setup, and then you can just pretty much do the 5 attacks with this, and then you can push. Everything will hit as long as they don't hit a defense. The minute they hit a defense, you just stop what you're doing and you just swing with Vanguard. You will need this because this will cost you 1, 2, 3 counterblasts, so you'll need this to kind of replenish that counterblast. In case you don't kill them there, you'll have the counterblast for next turn. So that's pretty much the ideal thing. And if they pop them or whatever, then you just use this, revive it. By this point, you should find at least one inlet. You go into inlet, and then you win next game with the inlet and the Ascendance Assault combo wombo. So that's pretty much what you'll do there. If you are going second, you have a different mulligan. Your mulligan will be similar but also different. If you're going second, you'll definitely want to see one of these. You'll definitely want to see one of these because this is your wombo combo. You'll want to see at least one of these. It's not necessarily need both. You still want to see Persona, but it's not your main tool, and of course you'll want to see this as well. Going second, you'll also want to see one of these as well, on top of also one of these. Goal here is that you want to see, since you're going second, your opponent will already be at 13k base. attacks. That means this no longer hits anymore. So the way you utilize it is you see one of these and you give it 5k power, or you see one of these and you give it 5k power, or you can revive with this. And I've had situations where I actually damaged this and then I healed it and then I just revived it with this and boom, it's back. This card doesn't, of course, is important for your 5 attacks. These are both important for your 5 attacks. And then you want to see a Persona just because Persona is just nice. The Persona isn't mandatory because you have some time to see Persona, so you can honestly probably send this back and then you'll draw so much off of his skill on Vanguard and then the inlet on top of that and off of the draws you get off of your ride line over here. So chances are you'll probably see all the stuff you need in time, so you'll probably at least see another, you'll probably see another flag break. You 100% want boosters. You 100% want a way to push on when you ride to 3 because you can actually kill on that turn as well. Your 5 attacks are easier to manage because of these 2 cards. There's less resources and stuff like that, so you definitely want to push as fast as possible. In case you do have like some kind of power-ups, that you can also go into this and kind of make your inlet or your Sense Assault bigger to potentially push for game. It depends on what your opponent is doing and kind of what they're holding, but it's important. The next thing I want to talk about is discarding. Be very cautious what you discard, like mainly with the stuff that you need resources for. Be careful of how you discard these and how you discard your orders, and how you discard your counter charger. If you discard this too early and you don't see another one, you might lose the game depending on how fast you kill. You always want to prioritize this, and this is secondary. So if you have to discard an order, always pick this one, unless you know 100% that you don't need to revive at all and you're holding, say you're holding these 2 pieces, you have them both in hand, you know you're going for lethal next turn, discard this, keep this. So that's something to keep in mind. You need to be cautious how you're, like, I'm not talking about perfect guards too. I'm not just talking about, you know, like ride line. I'm talking about perfect guards as well. When you're perfect guarding, the easiest thing to perfect guard is obviously with your orders. Like, why would you want to perfect guard with anything else, correct? So you want to make sure you perfect guard with the right order. Like, if you perfect guard with this and then you don't have a way to revive your units because you don't have them, you just screwed yourself. If you perfect guard with this but you don't need to revive anything and you can go for lethal, you should have picked this. You should have picked this as your target to discard, so that way this you can just put on your inlet and finish game. That is just these little things you can do, and it takes time to kind of figure it out. This is definitely not one of those, like, it's not a Bastion deck. I hate to put it that way, but it's just not a Bastion deck. I would say a lot of overdress decks are like that. It takes kind of more than one game to kind of understand it, but I think this deck in particular takes a lot more time. And people that ask, oh well, Magnolia is better, why not just take Magnolia? Magnolia is actually an insanely even match with Flagbrick. They both do essentially the same thing. The difference between them is the way they win. So Magnolia wins through aggressive draw, having interceptors and shield with the ability attacking. Flagberg wins through a guard restrict and also insane draw. They're both really similar decks. Flagberg theoretically has 1 less attack, but honestly it also has less rear guards on the board, which is less targets. Like, you know how it's less piece reliant. Like, in all actuality, they're actually insanely similar decks. The matchup is like neck and neck because it's really just who opens up their combos faster. If I open up all my inlets and I'm attacking you 5 times and you're a Magnolia player, you're probably going to lose. But if it's the other way around, where the Magnolia player is having all their inlets or whatever and they're beating my face in and I don't open my combo pieces, then I also lose. So the matchup is actually very fair and very even, and I would honestly prefer to deal with that, be a Magnolia player as a Flagberg player, than try and beat a Magnolia player as a Magnolia player, if that makes sense. I do not want to deal with that mirror match. That mirror match is awful. I have a higher chance of winning as just by playing Flagberg, because the win con is different and it's just enough to shred their hand and push for the W, whereas if I were playing Magnolia, it's just whoever opens the better triggers, and I just don't think that that's a fair game. Not that fair game. I don't think that's fun, and I don't think it's worth it. Like, I think mirror matches against, especially Magnolia mirror matches, are some of the worst things you can fight against. They're essentially the same deck. Some have a little couple techs here and there, but in actuality, a mirror match Magnolia is just who sees grade 4 first, whereas at least under Flagberg, I don't have to worry about that. But that, guys, I hope you guys enjoyed this video. I know some of you guys have been waiting a really long time for this. I'm sorry it took so long. For one, I was piloting this deck for a very long time, and for the actually two, for the longest time I wasn't even confident in myself. I was like, there's no way I think this is a tier 1 deck. Like, there's just no way I think this. Like, I have to be on something. Like, maybe I'm on crack, or maybe I just need to like stop playing Vanguard. Like, if I'm coming up with these hot takes. And then the more I tested it, the more I was like, no, I'm definitely right. This deck's really good. Now, I will say in the next set this may change. Turamaya, whatever her name is, the Fox Girl, is actually a direct counter into this deck. Definitely something to keep cautious of. Pretty hard just because the minus 10k is really brutal, but you can still win. You just have to be a little bit more careful how you play it out, and I highly recommend trying it out if you're going to Springfest or whatever. I'm done with Springfest, so deck's all yours to experiment with. I wish you luck. Again, thank you, Sam, so much for providing such an amazing, unique idea to Flagberg, for coming up with this idea. Why go pure when you can just think better, think outside the box, think where you can be a better player. This is where it starts. So it starts here, changing the ride line for something that makes the deck just just run a lot more smoothly. Piloting this deck, I really want to give you guys a really, really good deck to try out. I didn't want you guys trying something that wasn't tested. This is a very, very, very tested deck, so y'all should see a lot of success with it outside of OT. Guys, I'll catch y'all later. Peace out. Das svidanya. I'll see you guys next time. Bye!